We are following developing news right now at 10. A prominent Valley businessman is headed to prison. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brandon Lee.
And I'm Carey Pena. Danny Hendon, the founder of Danny's Family Car Wash, is admitted in court to knowingly hiring hundreds of undocumented immigrants. Jared Dillingham live at the federal courthouse tonight with more. Jared? New calls tonight for the chief of the Phoenix Police Department to step aside. Good evening, Arizona. I'm Carey Pena.
And I'm Brandon Lee. We are following new developments tonight at 5. An officer-involved shooting. Chopper 3 is over the scene right now.
We want to get right out to Jason Valentine, who is live at that scene tonight with the latest. Jason? In fact, the Brown family releasing a statement tonight saying that we are profoundly disappointed that the killer of our child will not face the consequence of his actions, but they have gone on to try to urge peace and say channel your frustration in ways that will make a positive change. Essentially what this means, folks, is that the grand jury here found that there was not enough evidence to prove that any crime was committed in this case. And I do want to read to you from a local station there some words from Darren Wilson tonight. Please keep my family in blue in your heart and prayers. And to his supporters, quoting here, I wish that I could hug you, but I cannot because of my family's safety. He has essentially been in exile since this shooting took place. The grand jury got this case on August 20th. Now, the scenes we're seeing tonight are reminiscent of what happened after the initial shooting, but the community there has been working very hard to try to establish peace in this process leading up to this grand jury decision today.
Back to you, Carey.
All right, so Dennis, I just want to put this out there. I mean, is all of this really fair to Diane Douglas? Her camp says, listen, she hasn't even started the job yet. She does, in fact, have experience. She served on the Peoria School Board. And a lot of people say, you know what, she's not a fan of the media, and she's kind of getting beat up for that. Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. That was Felicia Rodolini on this program taking aim at Attorney General Tom Horne. She is one of several candidates who hopes to replace him as Attorney General. As the election heats up, Tom Horne finds himself fighting multiple battles. I sat down with him to ask about the FBI probe into his life and accusations that he broke campaign finance laws during the last election.
Because there have been a lot of media reports that made it sound as though I had in fact coordinated with an independent campaign when I really did not. What people need to realize is you're allowed to be in contact with the person, you're allowed to have communication with the person, as long as it's not about their independent campaign. In this case, I had a complex real estate transaction, the biggest one of my life, that closed around that time. And we talked on the phone about that real estate transaction, and we had documentary evidence to back that up. And the people who were unjustly accusing me were saying, you must have been talking about the independent campaign because that was going on at the same time. Well, the fact is that we weren't. We both testified we weren't, and I was glad to have an opportunity to go to an independent fact finder and show the evidence that, in fact, we were not coordinating.
This case recently went to trial. A decision is now in the hands of a judge. The accusations all center around this attack ad against Felicia Rodolini and whether or not Tom Horne illegally conspired to come up with the money to pay for it right before the election.
At issue here, really trying to break this down to the basics, is this $400,000 that was raised for a television commercial.
Yes.
Now, in January, your attorneys met with Yavapai County Attorney Sheila Polk, and in fact, they were in settlement talks, but you said that you did not want to agree to that because Ms. Polk wanted you to admit to liability here.
Yes, that's right. She said if we were to arrive at a financial compromise, and you know, all cases, you have to remember I practiced law for 30 years, and so you always try to compromise cases. And every case should have some financial number at which it can be compromised. But she said she wanted me to admit liability, and even if I intellectually decided that it was in my interest to do that, I wouldn't be able to get those words through my throat because the fact is we did not coordinate, and I couldn't say that I did something that I didn't do.
If they rule against you, you would have to pay back the money and potentially 3 times in additional fines, correct?
Yes.
But this has opened up a political can of worms, and I want to talk to you about some of the other accusations that have come out and give you a chance to just answer directly about this.
Sure.
First off, why was the FBI following you?
Well, that's the big question, and really what has been profoundly shocking to me in the situation is that the media have not picked up on the idea that the FBI was following me a year and a half after the events that they were supposedly investigating, which means they had to have a political motive. because why would they be following me a year and a half later? I know for sure they weren't following me because of a campaign finance allegation, because it had happened a year earlier. So surveilling me a year and a half later isn't going to shed any light on that. And as far as their motivation goes, I'm open to what ideas people might have, but the only one I can think of is political.
The FBI ended up releasing details about other things that they say they uncovered in the course of their investigation. Some of this uncomfortable and embarrassing for you, and leaving you really on the defensive about personal issues in your life. They made strong accusations about you and your former employee, Carmen Chenal. Do you want to go on record about that?
Well, I haven't dignified that with talking about the accusation itself, but I do point out, for people who are interested, that she was a law partner of mine before I got into public office. I knew her as an extremely hard worker and a very effective lawyer. When she was here in this office, she had a full-time schedule of prosecutions, 30 prosecutions. Most days of most weeks she was in court.
Why wouldn't you just come out swinging and say, I wasn't having an affair with her?
I think that I don't want to dignify that accusation, but I do want to let people know that she was in the midpoint of her salary range, that she had a full schedule, that she was in court most days of most weeks, and that she more than paid for her salary by the fines she brought in.
It was alleged by the FBI that Horn was leaving Chenal's apartment when he was caught in what was described as a hit and run. Again, the FBI was doing surveillance. I asked him about that.
You know, you're the top cop in the state. You're here to enforce the laws. Yeah. And they look at it and say, geez, you're in a parking structure, you hit a car and you took off.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I really haven't had a chance to let people know what the facts are. There was an article in the Arizona Republic with a big headline that said that I did more than $1,000 of damage, and a picture of a car with a big black dent in it. And when I saw that picture, I thought, boy, if I put that dent there, I really should have left a note. But as it turned out, as you got into the FBI reports, the owner of the car said that his son put that dent in the car in his own garage. And that was, you know, here was a newspaper article falsely conveying what occurred. So the FBI agents who appear to have motivations other than just investigating the finance went out there and they washed the car and they looked for scratches. They found some scratches underneath the bumper. They blamed on me. It was 2 months later, so who really knows? But knowing these facts, the city attorney was willing to have me just pay a $300 fine with no admission of wrongdoing, and it made more sense to do that than to have a trial which would have been a public circus.
You did hit the car though, correct? The Range Rover.
Apparently yes, but it was, when you use the word hit, it wasn't the kind of a hit that was implied by the Arizona Republic article. You know, a bump that does no damage. A lot of people come to me and say, boy, I bumped into cars in parking lots, figured there was no damage, and drove away.
Do you feel that this has done significant political damage to you?
The polls don't seem to show that.
Time will tell. A ruling in the campaign finance case is still a few months off. Of course, we will continue to follow that very closely.